Hello, everyone. I've argued for some time that there is a universal religious instinct that permeates everyone, that it's just a natural human response to what we consider to be spiritual, mystical, the unknown, and that religious instinct just goes through every human heart. Many people will claim that they're not very religious, but typically, or I'm able to, throughout the course of the conversation, point out various different ways in which they're highly religious. That's just pick your God carefully that you're going to worship. Nevertheless, the universal religious instinct is such that people, in order to have that conversation, people want to ask, well, how do you define religion? Well, I typically define religion as the service of or interaction with the divine or supernatural through a system of attitudes, beliefs, and practices maintained within a given culture or community. Now, as a result, it's important to kind of break that down a little bit. It is a system of interlocking attitudes, beliefs, and practices, but it's typically what's maintained within a given culture or community because we're social creatures. We like to have things in common. And so as a result, when people come together and they have their religious practice in common, their attitudes, beliefs, and practices, there's a lot more that they have in common than they typically realize. And people naturally gravitate toward one another who will have these things in common. They have a shared language. They have a shared lexicon, words they use that only they know the definitions to. It can tend to create a sense of in-group and out-group dynamics, and you want to be careful about that. Otherwise, you can develop some cultish tendencies. But nevertheless, it's very comforting that we have these things in common, and it tends to kind of bind communities or cultures together. But now, when we think about religions, though, there are ways in which those religions are mappable on what I call religion grid. Now, the religion grid basically thinks of it this way: religion is all practiced in a couple of different ways. There's some nuance between this, but they're either a practice in a group or a gathering through designated officials, or they're practiced individually at what I call the popular level. So those that practice religious practice happens when everyone's gathered together using the symbols and rites and practices and all those elements of the sacred that they all agree upon. Typically, they're facilitated and led and conducted by someone holding sacred office. And so we would refer to that as official religion. It's the thing that everyone has to agree on so much, and they designated an individual to lead them through it. And that's typically where your practices, the boundaries of your practice are going to be more obvious. That's official religion. Well, on that, if you're going to grid this out on that on that vertical axis, you'll put official religion would be at the top, and this isn't to qualitatively determine one's higher than the other, but let's just, for sake of just visual aid, we'll put official religion at the top, and at the bottom we'll put popular religion. Popular religion is what happens more at the individual level, what people do on their own, in their household, when they're away from the group. This is going to have to do with personal practice. A person may say, for example, take religious symbols, for example. Our church may have a big cross within their church, and everyone's agreed upon that, and that's something that everyone gazes upon. It helps facilitate worship in the gathering, but that's not portable, and it can't be carried around with you. And so oftentimes people will have a small cross they use as jewelry or a rosary that they keep in their pocket, which helps facilitate their own individual prayer practice or their own way in which they remember God and throughout their daily life. No one is exempt from this. I mean, Muslims and Jews do the same thing. Any religion, you'll find this, they'll have this official religion that happens when the gathering happens, and a popular religion where it happens on their own. Every culture see this. It's not necessarily a dichotomy because there are gradations between those, but when you look at one is more official and one's more popular. Now, on the horizontal axis, though, if you're going to try to create kind of like a grid where you have vertical and horizontal, the horizontal axis is going to be what you consider to be normative. What's received practice within this community? What has everyone agreed upon? What is the system of attitudes, beliefs, and practices that everyone just kind of knows? And everyone knows so much that no one has to say. As a result, that's considered normative. And typically, it's not even anything anyone has pointed out explicitly, except when you deviate from that, that's when everybody knows. And so on that horizontal axis, you would have normative and deviant. Well, now that you have kind of your vertical and horizontal axis, now you can grid it out. Is this practice Is this religious practice more of an official normative practice where the gathering is happening, where what people can see, and they conduct themselves together as being led by officials, and everyone can participate, comforted that they're well within bounds? Or is it officially now deviating from some other practice and is taking the whole group with them? And so oftentimes you see you can basically map the entire all religious practice within the Bible this way, and you can trace it. This is a time when the ancient Israelites were doing something that was normative and official, and eventually, or at some point, officially, they all deviated into something that was not acceptable practice or acceptable beliefs, and they were all considered to be deviating from the norm at the time. At the popular level, the same thing can be true, where a person is engaged in a normative popular religion, in their personal attitudes, personal practices, their personal piety, the way they pray, the way they conduct themselves. Even Muslims will have a prayer shawl for which they can maintain their prayers multiple times a day, even by themselves. So they're very much concerned about normative popular practice. Well, but at the same time, you can deviate from that, where a person can do one thing when the gathering happens, but on their own deviate with some. In the Old Testament, you would see household idols or things that people maintain or entertain in their private life that's very far outside of what would be considered normative beliefs and practices. So as you grid this out, you can look at your own practice and say, where do I land? Is my personal practice well within the acceptable normative views of my religious tradition for a Christian? That's always a good question to ask yourself. It's not just do I attend something that officially is Christian, but in my personal life acting in a way that would be considered normatively Christian as well? Or do I deviate from that sometimes on my own because, well, no one's watching? Well, God's watching. And so that's a way in which, and that's something you see throughout the Bible, where God is not content just simply for you to be normative and official. He wants you to be normative at your popular and your individual level as well. We see examples all throughout the Bible where it seems as though the God of the Bible is never content with you just on your own saying, well, I'm devoted on my own time, but I couldn't care less about the official religion and practice. That's out of balance. And to have official practice, but your heart is far from God, he finds that unacceptable as well. So it appears to be that for the Christian, what is considered normative practice is this oval that goes all through both official and popular religion, because God doesn't want to leave any part of you untouched by his influence. As you think about your life, and this is a tool through which you can actually read through the Bible and enjoy and kind of look at that and going, where are they landing at that time? But also it can be a convicting tool as well, wondering where you land on that grid at any given time. Anyway, that's all I wanted to share for today. I hope you have a blessed day. If you enjoyed this content, please hit like and subscribe, and we will keep it up.